What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and if I seem like I have some extra pep in my step today, it is for good reason. I'm just over the moon. This has been such an incredibly fun exercise. I have fundamentally changed the way I'm looking at some certain things because of going through this. I think that this has been even more fruitful, and I think that it has exceeded even my own expectations. Not just from the fact of the way I'm looking at a couple things moving into 2023, but some fundamental things that I think as we continue to track and as we continue to keep an eye on, is just gonna allow us to continue to play chess while everybody else is playing checkers, and I am extremely, extremely pumped. So, as you know, we have looked at Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. We've looked at the last 12 months of booster box prices for both sets individually. In this video, we're smashing them together in chronological order, and I've added some colors to it. It's not my normal Technicolor dream coat of Pokemon awesomeness, right? I've made it a little lighter, greens, reds, whites, everything's a little softer, so it won't sting the retina when you look at it. But it really is amazing to look at it with some color coding to it because the patterns just jump out on the page, and it is extremely exciting. So I always start these types of videos off with a word of awareness. Like, remember, this is just directional. So there's math doesn't think. Math is black and white, right? It takes inputs and it gives outputs. And what we do know is we know that we have known good inputs. We know that the BI calculator that we use is best in class. So we know the outputs are really valid. But hey, we can't control what's going on around us. Okay, we can't control what's going on in the world. We can't control what's going on in the economy. All we can do is sleep well at night knowing that we have made the best informed decisions that we have with our money. We feel comfortable with our investments or our purchases, and we're just excited to be in the hobby in general. So, for me, I never lose sleep because I know that every decision that I've made, I feel like I've researched thoroughly and I feel really, really comfortable with it. So just know that moving forward, and I'm really excited, so I'm not even gonna blabber anymore. We're gonna get on to the very first slide, which is Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield layered on top of each other. But before I get into the detail, if you guys like looking at this stuff, if you've enjoyed this journey with me, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button. I think we are building an amazing community. The feedback, the questions, the input that you guys provide every single video is just second to none. It continues to challenge me, and I have this huge list of videos that I have for the next, I don't know, 3 months, and it's all because of your input. So I would love it if you hit that subscribe button, drop a comment down below, give a thumbs up if you like the video. It really helps us grow. So here's what we're looking at. These are all of the 24 sets that have booster boxes from Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, and it's ranked in chronological order. So I've done 2 videos on this. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but I will tell you that when we look, I am assuming an MSRP of 143.64. I know some of these boxes you could buy cheaper than that right out of the gate. I know, but we have to baseline somewhere, and 143.64 is the baseline that we used because it made the most sense. So understand that's where we're starting at. I'll go through this line by line. Obviously, the left is the set name, top to bottom in chronological order. Then we have the December price, so that's the price that the set closed at for the booster box price in December. And then remember, what we do is we put all of the individual ending month booster box prices into the spreadsheet, and then it gives us this spaghetti model which projects the price for the next 3 months. So I could have done it for a day, a week, a month, a year. I decided 3 months was the right time frame to look at because anything longer than that spaghetti model starts to get super wide and it just has these huge variances. Anything less than that, I just didn't feel like the data was relevant enough. We didn't give the math enough time to work. So this is 3 months. When you see the low bound, that is the data saying, okay, based on the previous 12 months of price trends, the data suggests that, hey, Silver Tempest, the booster box price at the end of December was 120 bucks. It's saying at the end of March, it could, on the low side, the very low projection, is $65, okay? It is saying on the high side, it could be $137. So the low percentage, you'll see that in bright red, negative 46%, right? That's if you buy it at 120 and it drops to 65, that's a 46% drop. And you'll see the upside is the inverse of that, right? So it's 14.5% up. So if it goes from 120 to 137.36, that represents a potential gain of 14.5%. And then the delta is simply the difference between the low percent and the high percent. Delta is just a way to express uncertainty, or some might call it volatility. I don't think volatility is the right word, but just uncertainty in the data, right? Because the bigger the gap, the more the data is saying, hey, hold on a second, I don't know what the heck this stuff is gonna do. So I'm giving you these huge ranges because I don't feel comfortable giving you a narrower projection. And you'll see that mostly the newer sets have a higher delta, which makes sense, right? Because they're newer, the prices jump all over the place. So that doesn't really surprise me. What did surprise me was some of the higher deltas that I saw in some of the older sets, but we're going to get into that in a minute. And then you'll see on the side, it says age in month. I think that's really important to understand the age of these sets. And then that also factors into the lower ROI and higher ROI. So the way that works is, let's look at the sun and moon line on the very, very bottom. Let's look at the high bound. So the December ending price for sun and moon was $231. The high bound, so the math is saying, hey, at the high end, at the end of March, this might finish at $250 a booster box, okay? So the higher ROI is 10%. Now you might be saying, hey Ryan, 10%, if I bought it for $144 and now it's at $250, like that's a much bigger gain than 10%. Well, ROI is annualized. So that means if you bought it at $144 71 months ago and it finished 3 months from now at $250, that's an annualized rate of return of 10%, which is hands down, absolutely no questions asked, best in class. You know, we've been in the middle of a bull market for a long, long time, and then obviously the pandemic hit and we started to drop. We were in a bear market, and we've kind of been trying to find our feet here. We've had a lot of macroeconomic things going on in the stock market, so it's been, you know, it's been kind of sideways for a long time. But I promise you this: a 10% annualized rate of return over 71 months is an absolute slam dunk of a win. I don't care what you're into. I don't care if you're into real estate, commodities, art, whatever alternative investment. That's just a solid return. And I think that's, at some point, that's what we're going to have to start getting back to from an expectation standpoint. So, and then the lower ROI is exactly the same thing, right? So now the lower ROI is saying, hey, if it ends in 3 months at $217 and you bought for $144, that would give you an annualized ROI of 7%, which is, again, great. People will take 7% all day long. So anyways, for me, it was really cool to see this heat map. Obviously, you know that I'm going to call out later on in this video. We're going to look at this in certain segments. I really like that big green, you know, from Sword and Shield all the way down to Ultra Prism. The light represents, hey, if it's a positive low, so that means even the lower bound is suggesting a gain over the next 3 months. That is green. Those are the high. The darker the green, the higher the low percentage, and then the upper percentage as well. And then the delta, I like a tight delta because I like to feel confident in the data. So we'll get into that more in detail, but I just wanted to take a minute. I wanted to show this to all of you in case anybody wanted to pause the video and look at any individual set. This is all of them, but I am going to break it out in segments here in these next couple slides. So, next one right here, what this is those middle ones that I was just talking about, right? So the ones where I said, hey, these are the ones in the middle. These are the ones where I started to see some really cool correlation from Sun and Moon to Ultra Prism. Like, look at all that green in there. So the lower percentage, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 8 that the data is saying, hey, even if this doesn't go well, our worst projection is it's still going to be positive in 3 months. That's really encouraging. And then you see a whole lot of positives in the up percent. Matter of fact, all of them are positive, right? Everybody says, hey, if it does as well as we think it could, all of it's going to be up. And you see some really tight deltas in there. So that's, again, what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a high low and a high high and a really low delta because I'm not huge into volatility. I do take some risk. I've shared that in previous videos. But the predominant majority of my money goes into things where I would rather see a much slower climb with a little less risk versus taking those big hole shots every so often, which I still do, but just not as often as you would think. And then over here, you see the lower ROI and the higher ROI. I mean, look at those. Those are just, they're just crazy numbers. And it scares me as a long-term cardboard collector. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years in the sports card side at a really high rate. It scares me to see numbers that high. I think at some point, I don't know if it's in a day, a week, a month, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. I don't know when it'll be. I mean, we're going to have to see some type of correction. It just can't continue to go up into the right forever. But I will tell you this, the market seems to be going strong. So those numbers, I don't really see them tailoring off anytime soon. So again, these are some really interesting sets to look at. And one of the coolest call outs that came for me when I was looking at all of this together is for Sword and Shield. And again, it's a newer set, right? It needs some more time to mature. But for the Sword and Shield set in general, expansions 7 and 8, or 7 and 9 are the most valuable, and for Sun and Moon, 7, 9, and 10 are the most valuable. We're going to continue to track it. We're going to continue to keep an eye on it. But with a new set like Scarlet and Violet coming out relatively soon, it is going to be really interesting to see how Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, how their earlier sets have performed. So we can identify, hey, maybe I want to get in early on Scarlet and Violet, or maybe I want to be investing in Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield for a little while Scarlet and Violet has some time to bake out and some of these older sets have time to come out. I know that traditionally out of the gate, the newer Pokemon sets, they don't have a lot of flash. They're really focused on mechanics. So we'll have to see there. And again, down at the very bottom, you'll see that these are the 4 oldest sets that we've analyzed up till now. And interestingly enough, look at all that delta. So not a lot of huge gains here. The math is saying, I don't know, like Crimson Invasion could be down 14% or up 10%. Even Sun and Moon, it could be down 6 or up 8. The delta is 24, 27, 16, 14. Just a lot of uncertainty in those 4 oldest sets. And a lot of the narrative that I heard while I was doing all of my research for the long time that I did before I even decided to start a YouTube channel was this narrative that older is better. But I just, I think that there has to be more to it than just age. I truly believe there has to be more to these boxes than just age, or else you're just buying cellophane. And for me, it was interesting to see these 4 sets, which just don't seem to be performing as well as some of these other middle sets. So really, really cool to look at that. And again, I think that 7-9 set and 7-9-10 set is something that we'll keep an eye on moving forward. And as we continue to get more data, it's going to be really cool to keep an eye on. All right. Remember, I always say data is directional, and I always say that it is just a tool in the tool belt. So these are 2 examples that jumped off the page at me when I was sitting here and I was thinking, hey, how do I humanize this a little bit, or where do I see some opportunities, or, the data, like I said, it's just black and white. So let's look at Astral Radiance, okay? Astral Radiance came out in May of 22, so, we got 8 months on it. The low bound, according to the data, is $75. Now, out of all the sets that we looked at, the lowest closing price in December was $98. I don't think Astral Radiance is going to drop that much more below 95. So I can go in and I can change the lower bound. And again, I don't personally think it's going to drop to 95, but I have to bake in some kind of downside because there's just no guarantee it's going to continue to go up. In my mind, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on Crown Zenith. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on Scarlet and Violet, especially with the new MSRP price increasing. I think some of these Sword and Shield sets, they're either already produced or there might be a couple more print runs, but I just don't think it's going to be as crazy. I'm not as worried about it as a lot of people are. So I feel okay changing that lower bound manually to $95. And when I do that, you see the delta drops from 60% to 40%. You see that the lower bound percentage goes from 28% to 8.6%. The upper stays the same. So Astral Radiance feels like a more encouraging buy to me if I'm willing to take some big swings, on some possible, outside upside, right? That's where we talk about the risk here. Obviously, there's still a huge delta. There's still a lot of risk there. But when I change the lower bound from 75 to 95, just using my own thought process, it starts to look a little better. And then this is where I really thought something cool jumped off the page at me. So I was looking at Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze, and I was looking at where they ended in December. So Vivid Voltage ended at $130, Darkness Ablaze at $147. And I was like, these are pretty mature sets, right? One was November of 20, one was August of 20. How will these compare to the Sun and Moon sets? So the average Sun and Moon set is about 20 months older than Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze. So I said, let's see how the average Sun and Moon set is doing. So Sun and Moon is at $420 on average per booster box. And then I said, they went through a pandemic, they went through a lot of FOMO, even though the prices have continued to rise this year. So that pandemic craziness I don't feel like is built in anymore. And so I said, okay, let's take something off the table. Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze, they still could have a reprint. There was probably more printed of Darkness Ablaze and or Vivid Moon and Darkness Ablaze than any of the Sun and Moon sets. So I was trying to take some of this into account. I said, let's say it does 35% worse. Don't ask me how I came up with that number. You could put in 50% worse if you wanted. You could put whatever in. I thought 35% worse over the next 20 months based off all the data that I saw is a very, very conservative thing. So that means, hey, let's say they get to $273. So that's taking the average of Sun and Moon booster boxes, adding 20 months, reducing 35% off of that 420, so $273, right? So let's say Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze over the next 20 months. That's a long time, right? That's what, a year and 8 months? That is a long, long time for this to grow and mature, and a lot can happen. But let's say it gets to that very, what I feel is conservative, 273 magical number that I put out there over 20 months. That's a 56% and 45% ROI over 20 months. I am using this and making this progress and making this thought based off of the data that we have gathered, the data that we've been looking at with Sun and Moon. This is an exact example of how we start playing chess while other people are playing checkers. We use previous data, we use some of our data that we have for more mature sets like Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze, and we start combining it all, and we start painting this picture, this beautiful Pokemon montage, and all the data, there's different brush strokes, and we just it starts to come together, and we can start to make some guesses. 18 months is a long time. Who knows what the heck is going to happen in 18 months? But again, the data here suggests to me that I would not mind getting into Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze. Vivid Voltage was one of those first Sword and Shield sets that had some shiny to it. Darkness Ablaze has a Charizard in it. You know, I think there's a lot going for those two. So, again, two different ways where you take data, which is black and white, you add that big, beautiful brain of yours into it, and you can start making some data manipulations to say, hey, this is what I think might happen, and you feel really good about it because it's not just you, it's also backed up, you know, with some hard facts. So I thought these were two cool ways to look at it. Astral Radiance certainly has my attention, so does Vivid Voltage, so does Darkness Ablaze. I think those are, I think especially Darkness Ablaze, I think that's a great set to get into. So, very next, I told you this was going to be a little bit of a long video. What am I interested in? Let's talk about Sword and Shield, okay? Astral Radiance, I just got done talking about it. You know, I think that floor is over-exaggerated. I think there's a ton of upside. I feel like Crown Zenith, I feel like Scarlet and Violet coming out. I just feel like there is going to be a lot of focus on them. So Astral Radiance has my attention. I'm going to do some more research into that, and I might pick up a booster box or two there. And then Chilling Reign. Listen, I have been bullish on Chilling Reign since the very first video that I ever produced. I think the price back then was $104. Certainly doesn't mean that I got anything right. Like sometimes you can just throw a dart at a dartboard and you get lucky. But I do think that that Chilling Reign is going to continue for all of the reasons that I said for Astral Radius. I think Chilling Reign is going to continue to do well. You know, it's 19 months fully baked, so it's got some time behind it. I'm bullish on Chilling Reign, and I think that the upside of 16.3%, the low bound of negative 8.8%, delta of 25%, it's a little higher than I'd like, but I also think that I just don't see it dropping down into the 110s again. I don't. Who knows? We'll see. And then from Sun and Moon, what am I interested in Sun and Moon? I took some this is where I really was happy that I did this exercise because these are ways of looking at these sets that I never would have looked at before. You know, Unbroken Bonds, if you watch the Sun and Moon video that was just dedicated to Sun and Moon, you heard me call it out. Unbroken Bonds is absolutely one of my favorite buys right now. 44 months mature, so it's not super, super old, but also it's anything but new. You know, a low bound of still a positive 3.2% and an upper bound of 12.5%, delta of 9. I think that is all day. If you can get in for under $500, you know, hopefully in the 480s, I think that's a great buy, and I think it's worth doing some additional research on, right? Celestial Storm is the same thing. It's about the same price coming out of December. A little bit of a tighter delta, right? The floor is a little higher. Instead of 3.2, it bumps up to 4.2, but also the ceiling's a little lower. So instead of 12.5, it drops down to 9.3. Super tight delta, only 5%. Again, that suggests that the data is saying, hey, we feel really, really, really good about this. So the lower the delta, the more confident the data is, and I like that. I tell you what, if you can get, I don't know, say it's somewhere in the middle, say if you can get 6% of your money in 3 months on a $500 investment, it's great. I mean, it's really amazing. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words as to how to express how cool this stuff is. So I think that's a buy. And then Ultra Prism, for all the reasons I said Celestial Storm too, I think Ultra Prism's a great buy at this point. A little bit of a lower low, a little bit of a lower high, but again, a super tight delta, a really old set. I also love the point that it's below $400. I was just looking at it on eBay like not more than 30 seconds ago. And I think you can pick them up in the 380 range. So Ultra Prism has my eyes for sure. Actually, I think that might be the first one I pick up here, but these are ways that we use data to go ahead and solidify our decisions. If you have something that you love, if you have your thoughts, if you have your feelings, you know, always go back, do some research, solidify it with data. I think over time, as we continue to build this out, this is going to be one of the most powerful and impactful tools in the Poke space. I think that's a crazy thing to say aloud, but I really think that as new sets come out, we'll be able to see the impact on old sets. Like what I will do is I will go ahead and mark on that data sheet anytime a reprint comes out, and then we'll be able to track and see, hey, after a reprint, it drops X percentage, and then you will be able to know in the future, hey, Scarlet and Violet is doing a reprint of whatever their name is. You know, we can expect this much of a decline, and then we can expect this much of a rebound over time. I'm telling you all, this is going to be it's going to be a game changer for all of us. I am thrilled to do it. I am thrilled to have you all along for the ride. I hope you're as excited as I am. I hope you've been able to bear with me for this 20-minute video. And of course, I had to end with my man Yogi. Just remember, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm super appreciative for each and every one of you. If you enjoyed this content, hit that subscribe button, hit a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and I'm just so thankful for each and every one of you. You guys have an epic day. Bye now.